I met Joe, actually don't remember when, but we had our first real kind of deep conversation with Ruby Hoedown in 2008. Later on in 2008, I ended up bringing EdgeCase on to do some work at AT&T Interactive. Between their methodologies and stuff, EdgeCase has helped me develop software at 2 different companies so far. Jim Wyrick, who many of you know, is the chief scientist at EdgeCase. And I guess I can announce this. EdgeCase was recently acquired by a company called Digital Garage, which is the CTO of Digital Garage is Ian McFarland, who used to be the CTO of Pivotal Labs. So it's a big move for EdgeCase. Haven't resolved the branding issues yet. We're all hoping it's EdgeCase, a new context company, because we like the name. But Joe's been involved in software development for a great many years, and before that was involved in sales. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Joe, and we'll get this conference going. Thank you.
So I love getting to know Kobe and JR. That really helped challenge a lot of the stereotypes I've had. Kobe and the AT&T guys and what I think of enterprises. But also JR and what I think of recruiters. So, damn, I've got an open mind. I hate that. All right, let's see where I can put this so I can turn my head. So yeah, when Kobe first started Conf, it was giving a talk at Mountain West, and I come in there. Yes, there you go. I come in there and I look up and he's got all the cameras fixed. He's like, all right, stand at the podium. And I said, yeah, kiss my grits. If I stand still, I become a caged animal. So ever since, I test his resolve to move the cameras. So thanks for having me here. My second keynote in my life, so personal goals achieved, achievement unlocked. So what I'm here to talk about is people, what I like to call the missing ingredient. So what do I mean by that? Well, there's a couple reasons that we need to start shifting our focus to talk about people. One of those is our definition of success. So as Kobe talked about, we recently announced an acquisition. We've been acquired by Digital Garage to form the company New Context. Doing a lot of what we do, doing it in a lot of better and bigger ways. Some really great backers behind us, some really exciting things. But the reason I'm talking about it is because of the announcement, I have gotten more phone calls than I can care to talk about. I have been contacted by people locally, people nationally, who I've been wanting to get an audience with for years. And I find it fascinating because our definition of success is being acquired, right? There's market validation to what you've done. Personally, I find this to be one of the most insulting things you could say. Because I've spent 5 years building a company not because I want to be acquired, but for various different reasons. And when you tell me that I'm successful because somebody gave me some money, really? My success comes for a couple different reasons, or in a couple different ways. One is I ask myself 2 questions constantly. First of all, it's a mirror, mirror on the wall kind of scenario. When I first started EdgeCase, I was working for a company I loved, but I had to get on a plane every Monday morning and get off every Thursday. And I decided I wanted to stop traveling. I wanted to, be a father more than I wanted to be working for this company. Ironically, I told that story 3 times last year in different countries. I love to travel for this. I like to teach. I like to talk to people. I love to meet people. This is my passion. I'd rather do this than travel so I can cram myself in a conference room and work at 60, 70% of my capacity because I've been bleary-eyed from travel and I'm sleeping in a hotel and da-da-da. And I felt that we could do remote work and do it well. Be on site when we need to, be off site when we really needed to go heads down and get stuff done. I also looked around Columbus, Ohio, and this might surprise you, but Columbus, Ohio is not exactly the most attractive place to look at. It's not Boulder, it's not Austin, right? But we found that we have an incredibly livable city. We have a lot of people there that enjoy living there. Everybody is there for one of 2 reasons. They found a guy, they found a girl, right? Somebody's family's there, they're not moving. Same thing with me. I was an Army brat and moved all the time. But my wife is from there, and I'm sure as hell not leaving her. She doesn't want to leave her family. No big deal. So you turn around and go, well, let's create what we want, right? I've had a lot of lessons on what not to do, and a lot of lessons on what not to do, and a lot of lessons on what I liked. And so I ask myself this all the time. If I had to get a job tomorrow, is this the place I would still desperately want to work? And the other one could be a little bit more controversial, but as a, sorry, didn't think about projector height. As a owner of a consulting company, it's very easy to cross a line. And so I do ask myself, do I feel like a slave owner? Do I feel like I'm giving value back to the company instead of just getting value out of the people who work for me? Kind of a harder question to talk about, harder question to acknowledge, but as long as this question comes back with the answer that I want, I'm very happy with what's going on. And then I have another measure of success, and that's Twitter. I constantly see tweets coming out, and they couldn't make me feel better. Things like Scott Walker, roughly 2 months in, still feeling lucky every day that I get to work with amazing folks at EdgeCase. Matt Darby, I can't believe I get paid to hang out and have fun. Justine, our designer, no, yeah, so, no shit. I feel bad for people that don't work for EdgeCase. These are the kind of unsolicited comments I get. We took on an apprentice last summer, and he tweets about, oh my god, I'm so excited I get to, have my first internship at EdgeCase. And immediately this other guy comes back and he goes, oh, you poor soul, you'll never be able to work anywhere again. That's my measure of success. Those are people, not money. Aaron Murdoch, a really close friend of mine, lives here in LA now. He was working for us, came out to LA on a contract, saw the beach, damn it. I didn't think about that. Saw the beach, fell in love, decided he needed a change. So unfortunately he left us, but I'm talking to him yesterday, and he's told me this several times. I still tell my, people where I'm working that my current job is the second best job I've ever had, alluding to the fact that he still loves us. He still sends people our way all the time. That's an impact that lasts a lifetime. That's a measure of success. But that's because we focus on people. If you ask somebody what you need to start a successful technical company, to have a successful software project, you talk about the triangle all the time. People, process, technology. So why is it every damn conference I go to, we talk about two things? Why is it the talks that you sign up to go to, you got 4 tracks at a conference, the class that you go to will most likely fall into 2 categories? Be honest. There's something wrong. We're not focusing on the right thing. I had this realization recently. I've been on a lot of projects, from the companies I worked with before, through the projects that EdgeCase has gone through. I can't believe you said that. Excuse me. Been on a lot of projects, and I realized this. I've never seen a project fail for technical reasons. Not once. It was never the fact that we used Mongo instead of a database. It was never the fact that we had a dynamic language versus a static, right? So I was talking to a really close friend and mentor, Glenn Vandenberg, that says, you know what, I'll take that a step further. I've never seen a project succeed for technical reasons. And I started thinking back on it. Some of the most successful projects I was on, the one at my last company, when I left, we were working at OnStar. I'd been in Ruby for a while. We were working on a Java platform. We're doing SOA. We're doing it in a corporate environment where you had an act of God and a hand grenade to get anything deployed. You had to threaten vice presidents. You had to, buy people coffee, whatever you had to do to get something done. But I worked with the most amazing team I've ever met in my life next to EdgeCase. Up to that point, I had people that would take me aside and go, look, I can see a personality conflict here. Here's what I'm noticing. Are you seeing this as well? I learned so much on that project and so much in that year with that company, and nothing had to do with technology. From a technology standpoint, I hated the project. I was in Eclipse every day, for Christ's sake. I'd even tried IntelliJ up to that point. Right? So even in the Java world, there was some relief, and we didn't get it. We had a 2-hour discussion with their developers about whether we should put the curly braces on the line or next to it, or down the line, right? Did we really talk about this crap? So much so that one person's solution was we get Emma, one of these tools to do check-in that would run pre-processing, to actually let people do what they want to do and then pre-process it so it would do it back. Seriously? Right? But, so for technical aspects, this thing was terrible. And it was the most successful project I've been on to date. And by far, even through the ones we've done at EdgeCase, it's in my top 3. And it was all because of the people. When things came up, we knew we could talk. When we had a problem, we knew we had freedom to express what was going on with each other. We knew that feelings weren't going to get hurt. We knew that everybody would try to do their best and to improve. And it was great. So I'm on a new mission. 2012. I want to make this the year of the people. We're going to be putting on what I call People Conf. It's going to be coming up in the fall. I'm going to be talking about this a lot more. We're going to start offering training sessions on how to be a team member. We're going to start talking about why people hate pairing. It has everything to do with the fact that you don't have the tools you need to be successful. Pairing is not about TDD. It's not about ping pong. It's not about one monitor versus 2, one keyboard versus 2. It's not about whether the guy's hungover or not. Well, okay, sometimes it is. Pairing is all about people. And you're in a pressure cooker situation. So anything that could go wrong is going to go wrong exponentially, right? This is why people hate it. This is why people can't get the success behind it. You don't have the tools. That's what we're going to start working on. Dave Thomas is famous for saying, I want you to learn a new language every year. I'm coming back and saying, no, this year, I want you to learn psychology. I want you to start finding things and concentrating on certain areas, one at a time. I want you to start being aware of what's going on around you. There are tons of books, there are tons of resources out there. And it's actually pretty damn fascinating. We like to hack computers until the cows come home, right? We were the ones that our parents hated because every time they went to use a computer, the damn thing was broken. We're like, yeah, sorry about that. Half of us tried to talk our wives into using Linux at one point. How I'm still married, I'm trying to figure out. So I've wanted to write a book for years, and I didn't know how to present the information. And I had a moment of epiphany about 4 months ago that a way to present it, and that's in people patterns. We know patterns. We know how to digest them. If I look back at where I am, all of my success, none of it has had to do with being technical. I'm the furthest thing from an engineer you'll ever find. But I've got enough of the people skills to get me through to ask the right questions to the right people at the right time. I talk to people. I get to know. I digest information. I listen. But what I didn't realize until much later is I was given tools in explicit ways and in subtle ways to help me deal with this. I was an Army brat, so I was lucky, we only moved about every 5 years, right? So you very quickly learn these walls that we put up in high school that we teach ourselves to put these protective barriers up, to get rid of them. Because some of your closest friends you're going to have for 3 months. I learned that you can renew yourself. You can change yourself. It's okay. Because if you move, you get a new chance at it, which is great in high school and middle school, right? So you start down one path towards your personality, you're like, I kind of don't like this. But who can decide halfway through their golf thing that it's just not for them, right? No, I didn't try golf. I don't have the hair for it. But I also came back to the States for my senior year. Okay, that one really did well. Went from a school of 367 kids to my first day at this civilian school in Cincinnati, Ohio, where they had a senior class meeting with 584 seniors. Talk about culture shock. But I learned that people view things very differently in different contexts. I'd lived in another country for 9 years of my life, in Germany. And I learned about cultures and stuff. But immediately I learned that even in the same country, you can have different cultures. You can have different ways of looking at things. And it was fascinating. And it was interesting because when they wouldn't understand what was going on with me, I could see why. But then I could understand why I wasn't understanding them. And it gave me that ability to step back at times and go, okay, here's what we're seeing, here's what we're doing. I then took competitive speech and debate in my senior year because, well, it looked interesting. I got in there, I thought I was just taking like a theater debate type class. And I get in there and it's like, no, we go to competitions and all this. I'm like, oh, crap, I don't want to do this. But then I look around the room and there were like 3 really cute girls there, so I stayed. But competitive speech and debate was fascinating. It taught me so much about communicating, about how to get points across, about bad arguments, about keeping the flow of things going. And so I started realizing that, again, through that, and then through a lot of the projects I'd been on, I learned so many tools about how to deal with people. I became a salesman right after I flunked out of school the second time. I was working a temp job as a secretary in a hotel, and my boss came to me one day and she goes, "Joe, we love you. I have to promote you or I've got to fire you." Because I suck at being a secretary. I am awful. But I was great with the people, right? They loved that. So they created a job for me as a junior salesperson. No idea what I was doing. You can't just slap a suit on somebody and expect it to start being productive, right? So a lot of things I started figuring out and going through. And so now I've been trying to distill a lot of those things down. They're not written yet. I'm not promising something's going to come up in this amount of time, but I'm going to start talking about this a lot more. Because again, it's the idea of bringing it down to patterns we've identified with. Now, I'm sure there are psychology geeks out there. I'm sure there are people that have done this. And I know there are a lot of geeks out there. So as soon as I start talking, they're going to go, "Oh, but what about this one case?" Right? We have this tendency to have arguments where if you don't give the exact correct answer, like in an academic kind of way, people stop listening. Well, if that's the way you are, probably want to stop listening now. I'm going to brush with the broadest of strokes because I want to affect the most amount of people that I can. By trying to be exact and precise, you might focus and find somebody, but by trying to be brush with a broader stroke, you're going to affect a lot more people. You might hit 80%, offend 20, but those 80% are really going to take it away. So just as a fair warning. So the first one is the conversation Rolodex. I was watching Twitter, going on my way to Ruby Midwest to give this talk for the first time. And I saw a tweet from this girl in Ohio, incredibly sweet. It was something to the effect of going to a strange city to be around a bunch of strangers. First time traveling outside to this particular area, to be around a bunch of strangers for 3 or 4 days, I don't know how I'm going to handle it. And I was absolutely flabbergasted. Because I will feel more alone in my hometown, sitting on in my front yard with neighbors all around me than I will here. Right? I have 200 people with the same types of interests that I have, or with people that I've hung out with a lot. What better place to find somebody new, to talk to somebody? But we have it ingrained in our heads that we're introverts, right? Well, we might be. We might get our energy from being alone. Well, I'll bet you the reason we get our energy from being alone is that we've always been around strangers. In high school, you were one of the only people that understood what the teacher was talking about. And I don't know, 7 out of 10 times, you knew more than the teacher that was standing up there. And it was frustrating. They would say the same stuff over and over and over again that you got the first time. So you got in trouble for not doing the homework because it's busy work, right? You excelled in calculus and you absolutely sucked at English or history because they kept giving you those damn, fill-in-the-blank papers with the same questions again and again where you'd already memorized all the presidents pretty quickly. Right? You've always been kind of this fish out of water for the longest period of time until maybe you started going to work, or you started going to class, you find some of your friends, right? This is kind of the typical geek problem that we have. And so we assume that when we're in a large crowd, we're in a bunch of people that don't think the way we do. But the reality is, you are in a group of people that are very similar. We're all here at least for a common reason, right? We all, love Ruby or want to find out more about it. Or there's probably a couple .NET guys in the room kind of, gathering information so you'll flame us on a blog somewhere. No, I kid. We all, so have some conversation starters because it is awkward to walk up to somebody and be like, "Hi." Right? Nice shoes. Really awkward. So, have some conversation starters. Hey, who's your favorite doctor? If somebody says pediatrician, just be like, okay, Somebody says David Tennant, well, now you know you're on the same page. Right? Walk up to somebody and say, who shot first? Tons of things. What was your favorite talk you saw today? Favorite conference? What do you think of the keynote? And think of a specific question. It's hard for people to get conversations started. It's kind of awkward. But there's this interesting thing that, Yes, good. There's this interesting thing where a lot of people here would like to make new friends as well. They would like to talk to people. And maybe you're not going to be lifelong friends, maybe you're not going to really like a person. The next thing I'm working on is kind of conversation Rolodex with exits. I haven't figured those out yet. Have something to prompt you. Have something to kind of guide you along. With that being said, the voices in your head, they don't go away. My psychiatrist promises they're going to, but no, I'm kidding. So, what do I mean by this? Well, when I first started in sales, I slapped on a suit and I went to my first networking event. And I walked in there, and I must have looked like a 12-year-old completely in the wrong place. Because I'm just like, oh my God, nobody wants to talk to me. What am I doing? Everybody's talking in groups and they know each other, and this is just weird. Nobody wants me to be here. I don't fit in. These are the voices that start playing in your head. And they're actually, from a psychology standpoint, they're protections. Right? They're self-defense mechanisms. Because you really hate to be let down. You really hate to find out that somebody really thinks you're an idiot. And if you validate that, it's okay. But if you think you're somewhere you're supposed to be, and all of a sudden you find out nobody there wants you to be there, it's devastating, right? So what happens? There's a self-defense mechanism that goes up. You start building these things up, because it's a lot easier to have somebody confirm what you think than to have somebody break down something you thought was true. And so you build these up. I'm one of the world's biggest extroverts, except for, of course, Leon Gersing, if you've ever met him. I like to talk to people. I enjoy it. I will walk up to groups of people and start talking. I'll sit down at lunch at a random table. But those voices are always there. I've done this for years. I've proven to myself again and again and again, it's okay. People are interested in talking. I can get subtle clues when people aren't interested, and I know that they're there. But the majority of the time, people want to meet somebody new. They like hearing stories. They like at least, exchanging new ideas or hearing about somebody who lives somewhere else. Especially if you're on like the left or the right coast and you hear about the flyover states of us in the middle. Wow, people really live there? You actually like it there? It's all flat. There's no water? It gets how cold? That's my favorite. But those voices don't go away. So you have to learn to shut them up. Yes, there's some medications for that if you want, but realistically, just ignore them. They go away. Well, they don't go away, but they get quieter, right? Just like bullies. You feed them, they get bigger. Okay? So they're going to be there. The next thing to think about is, what do they see? Okay? Been talking to a friend of mine, Jesse Sturchus, who runs a company called the Improv Effect. Been giving a lot of training, doing improv to people, to companies and all this, as kind of team building and get people thinking in better ways, help with creative problem solving, and these kind of things. There's actually some really, really interesting lessons to learn from improv. And she's got a theory that the best people at improv are actually true introverts, because they're the most open-minded. Once she started explaining to me what improv was, I was fascinated. Because realistically, I always thought there was people that were even better at theater than the rest of them just went and did it. But it's actually not the case. It's a different type of personality. But there's a lot of lessons that everybody can take from improv. Because a lot of people I know recently have read Pragmatic Thinking and Learning, which, oh my God, should be required reading for everybody, about how the brain works. And we all get into this, okay, I know how my brain is working, I know what I need. Right? Once I figured out that I've got extreme ADD, you'd think that would have been obvious. I learned how to work with it. But the next item is, what do people see around you? What is it you're giving off? From how you're standing, to what your facial expression is, to everything, right? People, when you talk to people, you take in all that information. But we forget that when we go to express ourselves to people. Right? And so improv is all about what you're giving off to your teammates, because they want to be able to they need to be able to keep going, right? The whole idea is to get some kind of skit and to be able to keep rotating with it, to be able to keep going with it, playing off somebody else, keep things positive. So you have to concentrate and understand what people are seeing when you do this. We're in a business meeting at EdgeCase, And we've got a client who's come in, and we're about to enter a, 3 to 4 hour meeting, and client was a great guy, we liked him, but everybody was looking forward to this about as much as they did their algebra homework in school. And so we go walking in, and a couple of us do have attention issues. So 3 different people had their laptops, or two of the 3 developers had laptops open. And I know perfectly well they were fully concentrating on what's going on, right? A lot of us, we need some other input in order to concentrate more. And that's fine. But this client doesn't understand that. So there's one developer in the room who didn't have his laptop open, he's sitting there and he's looking at the client. So what happens? We spend the 2 hours of the client speaking directly to him and nobody else, and visually getting more and more frustrated. Because to them, they see 2 people who can give a shit, right? They're off looking at damnyouautocorrect.com or Facebook or whatever it may be. They didn't realize that one of the guys had actually submitted 2 of the JavaScript bugs we just talked about. Instead of talking about, let's just build it and get the hell out. The other guy's taking notes furiously on his iPad, but he doesn't look up once while he's doing it. So the client sees people who don't care. How many? I would also get questions from people. So I've been in the Ruby and Rails community for a long time. But my concentration was always, how do you justify the business value behind it? And now we're shifting to a lot of things like closure and other things. So what is the business value here? What's the business proposition that I can talk to people about, right? And so I get a lot of questions about that too. People are in a company and they're like, how do I convince my boss to use Ruby? It's just, I want to do this and he keeps saying no. He's just such a stick in the mud. And I keep laughing because I'm looking at this person going, how did you present this, right? Were you able to communicate the same way? Knew this one guy, brilliant developer. He was young, just coming out of college, and there's a startup that I knew who needed a developer, so I got the 2 guys together. And so they called us up, probably 12 weeks later, and they're like, look, we're right there, we just need a couple more things to get deployed. Can you come help us? Sure. So we come in. Sent 2 of my guys there, but I went with them the first day. And I sit down and talk to this business owner. And Nathan shuts the door and he's like, it just freaking infuriates me. The guy just, he comes in late, and we can't get anything done. He looks like he just doesn't give a rip. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay, talking. So leave that meeting and I go over and talk to Gary. And I sit down in the chair and we start chatting. And he's like, man, this guy just doesn't get what computers are about, what it takes. And I'm up till 3 in the morning working on this thing. And I can't understand why they want this other feature, and it just doesn't make sense. And you realize something interesting. Gary's there, looks like he's hungover as hell. Because he's been up to 3 in the morning coding at home. Because that's where he does it more comfortably. He's just out of college, so the idea of what he puts on in the morning is he claps, and anything left on the ground is fair game. The rest of it is gathered together and hopefully eventually laundered. He's got a scraggly beard and hair that he hasn't even bothered to touch when he left. And he comes meandering in about 10 or 10:30 because it was really hard to get up this morning, right? You look at Nathan, and he's in relaxed mode, which means slacks that are, $300 or $400 instead of $1,000. No jacket, but a really nice starch shirt with rolled up just a little bit to, make the impression, right? Everybody else in the office, real kind of, they think they're being casual but very businesslike. They're in there right on the dot, 7 in the morning, getting started, getting going, right? Yes, they leave the job right in the evenings and go on. You start to realize that even the way he's presenting himself is coming across incorrectly. Second of all, neither one of them is trying to listen to the other. They're just frustrated because of what they see and all the baggage they see around them. So how you're presenting something is extremely important. Second, what words you're using that are coming out of your mouth, are they the same as what are in your head? Right? I don't know how many times I've witnessed somebody try to convince their boss to use a new technology. Well, can we like try this Ruby thing on that? Really, what's Ruby? Well, it's this really cool language that is dynamic and that's great. Okay, or you're talking to a somebody in IT security trying to get approval for it. Well, what's this Ruby thing I'm hearing about? Well, it's this language written by a Japanese Mormon. For some reason, he stopped listening, right? So what are people hearing? And then in your head, what you're doing is going, yes, this is a dynamic, object-oriented language. It's going to save us on the cost of change later. Right? You're going through these points in your head, but they're not coming out of your mouth. Right? Be aware of what people are seeing, what you're listening to. Just fascinating thing I got in an unfortunate place, which was marriage counseling. But this idea of the three realities. 11 years into marriage, things we think are going great. We realize there are so many problems, we don't even know where to start. And we realized most of them came down to this. We had resentful arguments that went back years. And when we actually sat down and talked about them, they were laughable. A lot of times we were extremely emotionally sad about it because of how much time was lost over arguments that were completely in different ways. So what do I mean by the three realities? In every situation, there are three realities. What you see, what the other person sees, and the reality. If you've ever studied history, it's littered with this. History are simply events as seen through somebody else's eyes. There's this great book, Thucydides, The History of the Peloponnesian War, where he tries to write the first objective historical book, and he realizes it's not possible. He's trying to write the account of the Peloponnesian Wars, and realizing he can't get out of his own head and context of what's going on. He cannot present this in a neutral way. So no matter what you see, there's always what you bring to it. So arguments from friends we had in college that carried on that I couldn't see why, and she's thinking it's because of, and I'm going over here because of this. Holy shit, we never saw that. I've desperately been looking for a picture. I've seen these pictures before. Well, they would show a car that looks absolutely amazing, and you look at the other side, and it's just bashed to hell, right? If you're standing on the other side of the car, you're seeing two very different things. A lot of arguments, a lot of issues, a lot of things come up because of this. Now, I'm telling you, you can't possibly write a history book without your mental context. You can't look at things without your baggage. So how the hell does this do me any good? Realizing there's another side is what's important. This is where taking the bait was fascinating for me. My first day in, I get this big questionnaire. She's like, "It's an essay, it's going to take you about 2 to 3 days to fill out." Crap. And she's like, it gets very, very personal. And it goes into a lot of areas. So I start going through it. And it really did. Senior year in high school, and I'm sitting here seriously thinking about how do I feel about the death penalty? How do I really feel about abortion? How do I really feel about selective service? Gay adoption, which was a big issue at the time. And writing out reams about these things, and how I'm feeling about this. And turning it over to my teacher, who then proceeded in the second week to assign us our first debate. We had to argue the other side of what we felt. And I did miserably at it. And then we had long conversations, a lot of instruction, and you start to learn to get into the spirit of the debate from the other side. I'm not saying convince yourself of the other side. I'm not saying become that person, but have the ability to see it from the other side. I challenge anybody who has extreme political views to go in and try to argue the other side. And then tell me if you really do have these views. Effectively argue. You can. And if you can, I have a lot of respect for the views you have. If not, go do some looking. Because we're all full of piss and vinegar when it comes to opinions. But we don't look at the other side of things, right? I was desperately looking for somebody to give me a reasonable explanation of SOPA when it was out there. It's actually really freaking hard. I figured out that people that did don't use the internet, so, But I'm like, there are issues out there, there has to be something from another side, right? So when next time you think your boss is a dick, try to look at yourself through his eyes. Try to understand what's going on. What are his pressures at work? What are the things that keeps him up at night? Other than filling your paycheck, right? Is there something else that's bothering him, and you're over here arguing and asking him about this? Right? How many times do you get so infuriated with somebody who comes to you and says, sits there in a nice business suit. So your consultants will happen a lot, right? Somebody come in a nice business suit, they'll sit down, they're like, yes, we have this project we need done, and they have all these screens laid out, and you look at it and you're like, oh my god, it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. Right? Why don't you put the search box up here? What's going on here? And they have this very definitive guide that they have written out and taken a lot of time to do, and you're looking at it going, the hell, really? And so then you go and try to go and figure out how long it's going to take. You come back and you spend 6 weeks working on this project, and everybody's frustrated because what they want is just crap and all this. Well, why did they do that? What if this person has 10 years of IT experience? 15 years, let's say. They've spent 10 to 15 years of their life in a career going to IT and going, we need to be able to look for something, and can we do this? Like, can we just look across and just pick some data out of somewhere? And an engineer who thinks very exact answers goes, we can't do that. And then they walk away going, God, what do I have to do? The IT industry is famous for acting like Simon Says. Right? Well, you didn't say Simon Says, so I can't answer that. You didn't ask the question exactly how it needed to be answered, so I can't do that. Now, we've evolved. We've had an extremely amazing last 10 years in forms of process and communication. We've had an amazing 5 years of this. Right? Agile is almost one of those things that's just, well, it's definitely overblown in detail. That's another issue. But it's one of those things, it's almost a given, right? It's almost a given that we're going to communicate with you. You know what? Some people haven't experienced that yet. Some people haven't seen this change. And this comfort that they can come to us with, here's the real thing I'm trying to do. Because they've seen a very different reality their entire time, and so they've built up these defense mechanisms to say, here's how I'm going to communicate this. And so I'm not saying you're going to change them overnight, but if you understand where they're coming from and why they're doing it, and understand they're not doing it maliciously, or because they think you're an idiot, but because they've dealt with a lot of idiots in their time, maybe you can approach this problem differently. And maybe you can come back with a little bit more empathy. Not that you should believe that that's how it should be done. I'm not saying compromise, right? We hate that idea. Although that leads to that whole open mind thing. Listening without agenda. This one's fun. There's an improv game that Jesse taught me where you get a bunch of people in a room. And if the room was a little smaller, I'd try this. And two people get together randomly, person next to you. You tell them a story about the last time you had a really big injury. You know, you fell off your bike, gnarly scratch up the side of your head. You know, you're in 7th grade, you walked into school going, hey, look at this, right? You tripped in the kitchen, gave yourself a black eye, told people you got jumped. Whatever it may be. And then the other person tells you their story. And, you know, tell it with as much vigor as you can. And they go into it. And if it's something about an injury in a story, there's something about this that just people really get rolling. Plus, the first time we did this, we were in Scotland, and they have a history of storytelling. So it was hilarious what we were getting. At the very end of that, okay, switch people, tell the other person's story from the first person. So the story you just heard, tell it exactly in the first person. Oh, okay. And they start doing it. And then you do it a third time. And then there's little tips and tricks you can throw in there to make them feel self-conscious about what they're doing, so you let them know that you're watching them. So, when you get ready to do the switch, you're like, oh, that was great. I saw this one guy going, whoa, like this. And I saw somebody looking at their leg, right? And so the next time they're telling, they're going, oh, crap, is Joe watching? I'm not going to do it, right? At the very end, okay, tell the story you just heard. Well, somebody fell off a bike, right? Or they tell it, and it's like this great elaborate story. Like, all right, who was that? You know, whose story was that? This one guy in Scotland stands up, he's like, well, I was in middle school at one point in my life, and I did hit a car. That's about it. The rest of the story was just this big elaborate ruse, right? Because what happens? I am the most guilty person of this in the conversation, so I'm just going to come out with that right here. But I will be in a conversation, somebody will tell a story that a synapse fires in my head going, oh, you've been through something similar. And then it keeps playing really loudly, the spread that just has to be dealt with. As the person's talking, you stop receiving information. It's not intentional. You just get so excited to be able to be involved in this conversation, you forget what the hell they're saying. Right? So if I'm telling you to tell a story to the other person, you're looking at them going, okay, they're telling it this way, well, I'm going to have emphasis on this too, and ooh, that story's better than mine. Oh, what? Let's see. Oh, there was that one other time. Yeah, I'm going to use that one. And you're playing this in your head. You are not listening at all. right? And you have no idea what the point of this is. That's the beauty of this exercise. And then the second part, when I come in and throw in this making you feel self-conscious, you've also got another thread in your head going, oh God, is Joe watching me? I think he's there. Just kind of like right now where Aaron's taking my picture and I'm like, oh crap, am I standing wrong? Am I doing weird motions? These threads play in your head. But the thing that's lost is you're listening with an agenda. You're listening with the desire to tell a story. Get rid of that. Try to stop it. Understand it's happening. Again, these are things that are going to happen. You can't stop them from happening, but you can be aware that they're there. And you can take steps to make sure that you bring yourself back to the conversation. Ask a question. Great way to let them pause and make your brain stop for a second. Right? Especially if you're talking to somebody like me, I can go on and on and on. I love to speak. And your brain can only concentrate for 9 minutes at a time before it needs some kind of break. They've studied this again and again and again. And so if somebody like me has been going on for all that time, you need to break something up. Advance a slide, tell a joke, do something, right? But if you catch yourself off in another world, quickly come back and do whatever it may take, but understand that you're doing that. Because all of a sudden now you're starting to take information. So I'm telling the story in kind of funny context, but picture yourself in a really important business meeting, right? You know that there's something there that you've got to tell, it's there, it's bad, and they're talking to you. You've just not heard a damn thing they've said. And I guarantee if you're married, you do this every day. Bad news. Bad news is an acid. It sits in your brain, it sits on your conscious, and it eats away at you. It hits you physically, to the point at times where you can't eat. You have trouble sleeping. You can start having like asthma issues like I do, but I find out later it's more like anxiety attacks. Right? It's there. It eats at you. It sucks. But there's a way to resolve it. Reveal bad news quickly. I tell myself this. There are still times I fall victim to it. If I discover something's wrong on a project, I discover something's wrong with my house, in a personal situation, bring the other parties in immediately. Don't let it fester. Here's a trick to business. People hire you for your ability. People don't hire you to be a magician. We all know the saying, nobody's perfect. But somewhere in between, we feel that we can't go to our boss, our customer, somebody, and say we've made a mistake. Or say something has gone the way we didn't anticipate to happen. We can't go to them and say something went wrong and I fixed it, because I'm cool like that. We have this inability to go do that. So we sit back and we hear the bad news and we start trying to fix it. We try to do something for it. And guess what? A second mistake happens. Or guess what? That solution didn't work either. Now you've known the fact that this project, the core of this idea of the project is screwed, and you've known it for 3 weeks. That's a bad thing. It takes me forever to realize this, but I'm in a sales role. I own the company. Somebody starts complaining. I can't go, hey, talk to my man. Shit, that's me, right? First time I was ever a manager that happened to me was the most awakening moment in my life. People don't expect you to have the answers. They expect you to take steps towards correcting something. This is the whole idea about Agile. The whole idea about Agile is continuous learning and continuous feedback. You know from day one something's going to go wrong. You know something's going to go wrong minor the first week, probably 3 or 4 minor things the third week, and a catastrophic thing will happen in your third iteration. Every single Agile project I've been on is happening like this. I don't know why, but it happens. As soon as we discover something's wrong, we discover this project is going to take 3 times what we thought. We discover that the technology we were going to use really sucks. We discover a whole plethora of things. We discover we forgot to implement something and people's credit cards are getting charged twice. Whatever it may be. Pick up the phone. Go sit and talk to your manager. Here's what's wrong. Here's how we discovered it. Here's the first step I'm doing to fix it. And here's exactly when I'm going to come back and check in with you to tell you if it worked or not, and what our second or third options are. Immediately, they will hate you for about 10 minutes, 2 hours, 4 hours a day, until you come back to them and say, we fixed it. Or, that didn't work, we tried this, it didn't work, we tried this, and we're working on it right now, I'll check back with you again in another day. Get it off your shoulders, get it out in the open. It's amazing how positive people are about the ability to try to correct something. You don't have to be perfect. It sounds completely normal. Like we're all like, well, of course I don't have to be perfect. Nobody expects that. So why do we hide? Why do we not reveal it immediately? Brings up the other problem. You're hiding something. This appears as a dishonest move. You're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to protect everybody around you. You're feeling terrible about what's going on. And so you're just not bringing everybody else in. But what it looks like from the outside is that you have something to hide. You're trying to be dishonest about this. Get rid of it. Get rid of bad news. It is an asset. I had this one, I used to call it brutal honesty. I love the guy, but he actually helped me call it uncompromising honesty, which I thought was great. Which is just that. If you screw up, go up to them. I screwed up. Understand that when people get feedback on something, being nice and not really telling them doesn't help them. I'm not saying go around hurting everybody's feelings, but if somebody asks you for feedback on something, give it to them. I give talks a lot. I want to continue to improve. I gave one of the worst talks of my life back in 2007 in San Francisco. I'm surprised Josh Susser still talks to me. It was that bad, right? But through time, I've tried to get better. And to a certain point, I feel like I've gotten pretty good. And so I will go up to certain friends of mine and say, how did I do? And if they're a speaker, and if they were watching me, and they go, oh, it was great. That sucks. Right? Because I want to know, what did you do wrong? Well, you just about walked off the stage that one time, and you wouldn't stop pacing. Oh my God, you were so fast. Your talk didn't make any damn sense. The slide colors sucked. Anything, right? I want to hear. If I'm asking you, I want to hear it because I can take those and decide. Number one, do I listen to it or not? Is it their perspective or not? I have one guy that keeps telling me you just move too much. Well, that's nice. I appreciate that feedback. I've got so much freaking adrenaline going through me when I talk that I have no choice, right? Because otherwise, I just start doing really weird, just shaking things and playing with toys and moving my laptop around or whatever it may be. And so this is how I deal with it. But I'm asking for it. And on a project, if somebody's asking for it, you're in a retro. Have a retro, for Christ's sake, first of all. Second of all, uncompromising honesty. Just put it out there. Hiding something, not telling the truth to make somebody's feelings feel a little bit better, doesn't help. Now, being overly critical, being a jackass about it, that doesn't help either, okay? So there's things you can say. But we're all trying to get better in life. We're all trying to get better at projects. Obviously, you're here. You're here on a Saturday, right? We're all trying to improve. It doesn't help anybody to do it under false pretenses, to do it under false language, right? So have uncompromising honesty no matter what it comes down to. If the customer is asking you, how is the project going, and it's not going so well, and they're paying you money to do this, talk to them. Because if it's not going so well, you should be taking steps towards this. And it's going to force you to think about that. Listen between the lines. I was talking to a customer one day to see how we're doing on an engagement level, like as the company itself. We have retros on the projects, but every now and then I like to check in with the clients at another level and just be like, hey, you like this still? And I'm talking to this client, and we've got a team of people. And he's going on, we're talking about some details over here. I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, I have another question for you. I'll make up a name, but he's like, so how do you think, it's called Julio. How do you think Julio's doing? And I stopped for a second. I was like, I could very easily say, well, he's doing great. But if you listen between the lines, the customer is not asking how I think he's doing. He doesn't care. Something's wrong, right? There's another message there. There's a reason he's asking this question. He doesn't have the nerve to say, I don't like his performance on this project. He's too nice of a guy to say, I don't think he's competent. So I turn around and say, I would love to tell you how I think he's doing, because I think it's great. However, you're asking me this question. Obviously, you have an opinion on this, and I'm more interested in what you think than what I think, because that's what this phone call's about. He says, well, yeah, you know, and then he starts talking. Okay, great, we opened up the dialogue. We started the conversation. You're listening between the lines. We all had to do it in English class at school. Come on, admit it. You first started reading the story about this guy chasing this fish, you know, and at some point you realized it was a story about freaking life and upbringing and, you know, the struggles and all this. Had nothing to do with the boat and the guy with that one leg, right? Why was I so pissed? I kind of like that story till then. But you start discovering people write stuff all the time with other intentions. It's actually one of the best exercises you can go through. Because while I'm here talking to you about understand how people think, listen to their side of the story, think about the history they've got coming into something, maybe something's gone bad that day, maybe they were up till 3, not actually hungover, right? I'm telling you this and you start looking at it like that, that's great. But realize the entire population's not doing this. The entire population's sending you passive-aggressive emails because they're pissed at you. Or they're sitting there asking you how this guy's doing because they want him off the freaking project, because they don't like the way he looks, or, you know, they overheard him talking about something. I don't know, whatever it may be, right? Understand that there's so many subtle things going on in life, and people aren't going to be direct with you. So you have to learn to navigate through that. You can change you can't change other people. You can ask them to change, you can guide them to it. They have to do it. So the entire world is going to be filled with people who don't go through certain exercises. They don't give out. This is why retrospectives have activities to do this. Right? There are reasons when we do retrospectives, we do them with sticky notes and colors and, you know, different types of exercises. And you don't just do one thing and talk about it. You know, retrospectives, you came into a room and said, so, how do you think we're doing? It'd be the most wasteful exercise ever. Right? And we have reasons for this. But when it comes to email, when it comes to speaking, whatever it may be, people around you, start listening to what they're asking. It's never the words coming out of their mouth. This is one my business partner and I get in a fight with all the time. My business partner is the kind of guy that's got tons of water stored in his basement and bears gold out in his backyard. Okay, not really, don't go digging up his backyard. But, you know, if I start talking to him about, I don't know, how do you think the market's doing? Well, it's going to crash the next 3 days, right? He just has this unfortunate tendency to always jump on this. Now, I'm just the opposite. I am the biggest dreamer in the world, right? If it wasn't for him running our finances, we'd be bankrupt, right? I'll dream up a bright idea tomorrow. But the interesting thing is, from a psychological perspective, we build up walls all the time, right? We hate to be let down. So, like I was talking about earlier about the voices in your head when you go into a room, well, the same thing happens all the time, right? Somebody comes to you, they've got a business idea, oh, that's not going to work. Because it's not really your money on the line, so if it doesn't work, you get to be the cool guy that knew that it wasn't going to work. But if it does, oh, you'll be surprised, right? But what if you got into a technology and you're like, oh my god, this is the coolest freaking thing ever. And in 3 weeks you discover it's just evaporated, right? It was really crappy, there was a big fatal flaw that you didn't see. You're going to look like a moron in front of your friends, and you don't want to do that, right? You're not going to look like the guy who knew. Somebody comes to you and they want to partner up with you for something on some business thing, and you start looking at it going, they're just trying to leech money off of me, they're, you know, this guy just doesn't know what he's doing. So I'm going to protect myself. And then it works out well, you get to be surprised. That's a cool feeling. But if you come in going, oh, this is, you know, this guy's wanting something from me and there's all this, and then he turns out to be a jackass that's just trying to leech off you, well, you were vindicated, no problem. But if you come in going, man, this is a great guy, this is going to be awesome, and he lets you down, that sucks. But you know what? We can't stop that. You keep assuming negatives about things. Yes, you'll be surprised when things go well. But you'll give off an air of negativity. You'll go at things with an attitude that says, I dare you to prove me right. Most people aren't going to jump that hurdle. Whereas I go in as, the naive guy. Mr. Happy, right? My contracts are very short and sweet. They're proposals that, all the time we'll send out a proposal and somebody's like, great, can you send me the contract? I'm like, I just did, right? But it's human readable. Have I been burned? Oh God, yes. Quite a few times. Boy, does it suck. But I've had way more positive opinions from people, way more positive things happen in my life because of my assumption of being positive. This deal came through because of that. It's very easy to look at a foreign company coming in and buying you in a very negative way. Hell, we had movies written about it, or made about it in the 80s, the Japanese companies coming in and buying you out, right? Anybody see Gung Ho? I started making jokes at the company about doing calisthenics in the morning, and nobody knew what I was talking about. It really sucked. I hate getting older, damn it.
I got that.
Thank you. I love you, buddy. Always assume the positive, though. It's hard as hell, because your brain's trying to put up those defense mechanisms. But if you do, you win a lot more. People around you warm up to who you are. You can start playing with ideas a little bit more. It's a fascinating thing. The other thing is, tying into this, is positivity moves forward. Let's go back to improv. What are the two words that everybody knows in improv? What's that?
Yes, and.
Yes, and. Exactly. The key words in improv are yes, and. You're doing a scene with somebody. They come up. Oh my God, I can't believe we're on the moon. You come up and go, what the hell are you talking about? Well, shit, where do I go now, right? Somebody comes up, so, I hear you're a doctor. You come up, nope. Crap, what do I say next, right? So you gotta say yes. So, I hear you're a doctor. Yes. Well, crap, give me something, right? So the and is very important as well. Take it forward. I hear you're a doctor. Yeah. God damn, I'm bored because of all the stupid ones. Right? Okay, now I've got something to work with. So take this into meetings. Take this into brainstorming exercises. How many times are you in an exercise and you're just spitballing ideas of how could we solve this? Well, what if we went and did it, created a plugin for this? Somebody goes, oh my God, plugins suck. Oh, Jesus. What am I supposed to say next? Right? It hurts me psychologically for somebody to just instantly shoot it down. Well, I'm going to be afraid to say something next. Does that mean we have to entertain every harebrained idea? No. But don't immediately try to shoot it down. Think about it for a minute. Try to come up with it. Things stop when you're negative. Conversations can't keep going. It's really hard. So try to entertain what's happening. Try to talk about it. Again, think about what they're seeing. Well, it's an interesting idea. Are you asking if we could use Mongo because you have no idea how Postgres works? Or, try to carry the conversation over. What is the motivation behind what we're talking about? What is the thing going on? Try to keep it going. Because it's much more productive to carry it on. So again, this is where improv is one of those things that's just incredibly valuable, and a lot of us should be doing more of it. So with all that said, we're going to make 2012 the year of the people. You're going to start thinking about a lot of these things we talked about. I'm going to start getting this message out a lot more. I'm going to try to get a lot more lucid about some of these thoughts, get them down. We're going to talk about people Conf. If you're a conference organizer, you're going to start talking more about people. If you're at work, you're going to start looking and seeing, are the problems we're having people-related or technology-related? Are we going to stop trying to change technologies to help people problems? Start adding more layers of campfires and Skypes and all of this simply because two people don't like each other. Because somebody called him an idiot one day at lunch, and what he was actually saying is that was an idiotic thing I did, you just didn't hear the last part of the sentence. Start thinking about what's going on behind the scenes. Start thinking about people. Thank you for having me. you.